Namaskar and welcome to In Focus. Amongst the big questions of the day are questions to do with the future of Indian industry. What sort of situation does it find itself in? What steps are needed to revive it? And most critically of all, will those steps be taken? Here to help tackle those issues is the President of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Shekhar Dutta. Mr. Dutta, I want to talk to you later on about nitty-gritty details and the big, broad picture. But to begin with, as the President of CII, how serious is the situation facing Indian industry as you see it?
Well, currently the things seem to be improving, particularly after our meeting with the Prime Minister on the 31st of December. Some of the signals that we're getting from the government, including the announcements that have been made very recently, augurs very well for the industry, and I think things are beginning to improve, as I can see, even from the capital market.
Okay, that's just the last 2 weeks, but what's the big picture since, shall we say, the last election? From May onwards, how did things look?
Initially, obviously, there was euphoria because there was a CMP document, Common Minimum Program, and the fact that the opposition party, the then opposition parties, formed a government, a 13-party coalition, and they came out with the kind of message that even the previous government, including the BJP government, gave to the industry, was a good thing. And we hoped that this government will now push on with the reforms, or the unfinished agenda of the reforms at that time, full blast.
Okay, that was in June because everyone was happy that there was a government and the uncertainty was over. Was that hope and expectation fulfilled?
By and large, not yet. But there are certainly moves afoot, including the signals that, as I said, we've got in the recent past. One gets the impression and confidence that they might be fulfilled.
You say by and large not yet. For instance, import growth is substantially down compared to last year. Export growth is even worse. Inflation is rising. Industrial production seems to be tailing off. Depending upon which figure you take, it's down by 3 or 6%. Now, does that suggest a slowing down? Does it suggest a recession? Does it suggest just a minor problem?
It's certainly not a recession. Slowing down, perhaps, yes. And there are various reasons for the slowdown. Not the least of it, of course, is the fact that the sentiment amongst the industrial circle and the business community and the market per se is somewhat not as effusive as one would have expected. But even if you leave these sentiments apart, one of the biggest problems in the industry has been the liquidity and the cost of finance. And that has really put industry back into a thinking mode, whether to go ahead with their expansion, diversification, and also growth that they're planned for. So these are some of the issues that are being addressed at the moment.
Let me pluck 2 or 3 things that you said out and put them back to you. You said on the one hand, it's not a recession. You said on the one hand that things are looking better in the last 2 weeks. You've also said, on the other hand, that there's a liquidity crunch, that industry is in a thinking mode, that industry is therefore presumably pausing to consider. Now, which is it? Is it that things are not as bad as people in the papers have been saying, or is it that there are things that need to be done, and you've been given promise that they'll be done, you're now waiting for it to be fulfilled? Which is it?
There are a number of things that you've raised here, Karan, and I must say there are things yet to be done. I mean, there's no getting away from that. But having said that, liquidity has been a problem. It still continues to be a problem. Also, the cost of finance is a problem. And the interest rate today in India, as you know, is around 18 to 20%. The real interest rate is even 10 to 12%. Now, when you consider that kind of interest rate, any industry would think twice whether their project would stand a viability with that kind of finance cost.
Okay, Mr. Dutta, 2 problems you've identified for me, and this is quite interesting for the audience to try and see the picture. Liquidity, cost of finance. Briefly, what are the other problems that need to be tackled? And then we'll talk about how they're tackled.
Okay. Other problem that we need to tackle is about infrastructure. One of the reasons in the industry's viewpoint why industry is not moving as fast and as aggressively as we would like to do, and we are capable of doing that, is because infrastructure is not there to back us up.
You mean roads,
railways, ports, telecom, power, you name it, all the areas of infrastructure.
So infrastructure is a problem. What are the other problems?
public sector for the economy as a whole is a problem because it does take away a lot of resources of the government, which could very well be invested into areas which will help the government in building infrastructure areas or even the social sector.
So you want to see the public sector restructured, possibly even slimmed down?
Not only slim down, government should get away from running public sector.
Are you saying that in broad terms the government should do what it's best at doing and get out of things where it has no business to be?
Absolutely right, absolutely right. We believe that that's the way to make the economy competitive. Let the people who know how to run their businesses be given full facilitating environment to run their businesses, and let the government do more of the social issues which they are most capable of doing.
Okay, before we go on to talk about remedial measures that the government should take, are there other problems that you think need to be tackled?
Yes, I guess in a way, the government, let's not get away from the fact that it is a coalition government. And there are questions raised amongst potential investors from abroad, that is the policy of the government stable? Now, CII has always been very strong in promoting India abroad, of course, but promoting partnerships. So we just recently had a partnership summit in Calcutta.
So it's this question of confidence.
It's confidence building. And therefore we need the government, all the 13 parties of the government, to speak with one voice. And quite often it does not happen, although I'm quite sure the mood is definitely for making it happen. But that's something that we appreciate, that it's going to take a bit of time before they start talking.
Mr. Dutta, you've set a very interesting agenda, and I want to now try and talk about each of those things. You've talked about the need for political unity. You've talked about the need for tackling liquidity and the cost of money. You've talked about the need for tackling infrastructure. And on the table, there are a whole series of demands made by the CII, but also by FICCI and ASSOCHAM. Let's talk about some of those measures, and let's try and see whether they'll happen. You've asked the government for a restructuring of corporate tax. Some industry wants it down to 35%, others want it down to 20%. Why is this restructuring important?
We believe if you lower the taxation rate but widen the tax base, you're going to get a lot more revenues. And what the crying need of the country is to get more revenues, because the fiscal deficit of the country is so huge. And unless we can bridge the gap, the country will not be able to invest in the long gestation projects that they need to do.
Does the government understand and accept this view?
I think yes, the government does understand. They may have their own reasons why they cannot accede to our request or our suggestion in one go.
But they're understanding.
They understand it.
There's another request that you've made. Industries asked for the import surcharge that Mr. Chidambaram had slapped on in July to be withdrawn. How deleterious effect has this import surcharge had on exports in the last 7 months?
On imports, it's about 2% is the rate. Obviously, to that extent, the cost of imports has gone up. Quite frankly, I don't know how much revenue they've got out of this additional 2% surcharge that they've levied. But having said that, I think it was meant to be a temporary surcharge, and I hope that the next budget will review that.
But am I right in saying that it's had a fairly deleterious impact on imports and is one of the main factors behind the collapse of imports at the moment?
I wouldn't say that is the reason for the collapse of the imports. No, I wouldn't agree there. The imports is primarily based on how the economy is moving. If the economy is moving strongly, if the exports are strong, you will need to support that with more and more imports. And if therefore the economy is growing strongly enough, the 2% additional duty would not have really made the imports come down.
Nonetheless, the 2% duty is one of the things you want withdrawn. Are you confident that when the budget happens, you're going to see a reduction in corporate tax and the removal of the import surcharge?
I strongly hope so.
That doesn't suggest you're confident.
Well, one cannot be confident because the finance minister will not let out his secret until the 28th of February.
What sort of assurances did the PM give about these two things when you met him?
I don't believe he can give any assurance. The budget is around the corner. So therefore, all he did was to say, I hear you. We are making note of everything that you're saying, and let's wait for the D-Day to happen.
So you're keeping your fingers crossed?
More or less, yes.
Okay, something else you raised with the Prime Minister, which is an important subject, was the demand for the withdrawal of the minimum alternative tax. without any compensatory tax put in its place. Are you confident that will happen?
Let me clear the deck for CII at this point. CII has not made a demand for removal of MAT.
No, in fact, you're one of those that actually said you could understand it continuing for a little longer, but industry as a whole, and I'm talking to you as a spokesman of industry as a whole, has strongly asked for this.
Yes. Yes, I think the message that we have given as industry as a whole to the government of India about the MAT has been well taken and well understood. We also believe that MAT was an interim measure. This is what we were given to understand.
By whom?
By the Finance Ministry.
He didn't say it in the budget.
No, he didn't, but in our discussions, we did come across the views that until such time, the amendment to the the Companies Act and the Income Tax Act came about, he wanted, the Finance Ministry wanted the MAT to come
So once
out.
again, you're hoping that MAT will go in this budget?
Hopefully, because we believe that the Companies Act, as also the Income Tax Act, amendments will be also placed on the floor of the House.
So it will become redundant instead?
It will come, it will more or less...
Suppose it weren't to be withdrawn altogether, but were to be amended. Would that satisfy industry?
Not really. When you say amended, if the effect of that amendment is the same as the MAT, it wouldn't really satisfy, would it?
Suppose export profits were to be excluded from MAT as sometimes is required. Would that help?
That's a step in the right direction.
Suppose MAT were to be treated as some form of advance tax so that later on that amount is not paid but it's paid now. Would that help?
Also a step in the right direction.
Do you think that these steps in the right direction will be taken?
We are hoping that there will be no need for MAT once the acts are amended.
Okay, let me put it like this, Mr. Dutta. In the light of the last 7 months since the last budget, how serious a mistake, in your eyes, was the imposition of MAT?
Well, MAT, as I said, as CII, we have understood the reasoning for it as an interim measure, and therefore we have not said anything against MAT.
Let me reverse the question. How serious would it be if it is more than an interim measure?
If it is more than an interim measure, then of course it's going to hurt, because we in CII believe that we have to be proactive with the government machinery, because that's the only way United India can move forward. And if there is a support needed by either side, we need to give that support.
Okay, if tax restructuring and within that MAT were two big issues you raised when you met the PM, the other big issue was this question of FERA and raids. Now, we've seen a liberalization of the economy, and to many people it now looks as if laws like FERA are outdated. Are you, however, confident FERA will be abolished?
Well, I can only repeat what I've heard the Finance Secretary, not the Finance Secretary, but the Revenue Secretary has said in public.
N.K. Singh.
Mr. N.K. Singh, where he has made comments that the FERA provisions, some of the provisions are draconian, and therefore need to be looked into considering the new liberalized environment that we're operating under.
So once again, your fingers are crossed?
Once again, fingers are crossed, and I think we are getting enough messages in the various discussions we have with the Prime Minister and his colleagues that they are seriously looking into it.
You know, when people's fingers are crossed, they come to a position where they could be hurting. Are they hurting?
Not as yet. We believe in the government. We believe that we are talking to credible people. We believe that the messages that we are getting...
To be honest, Mr. Dutta, you don't have much choice but to believe in the government, do you?
Well, you have to believe in any government who is in power.
Okay, one test of this belief would be this whole question of raids. Now, In Focus interviewed Mr. Murasoli Maran, and he said, or rather he refused to accept, that the publicity that surrounds the raids, which is often a direct result of leaks from the investigating agencies, was actually trial by press, that it was demoralizing. How do you react to that?
I think it is a demoralizing thing, because before you even prove somebody guilty, if you hang him, that's not justice. At the same time, we stand for anybody who contravenes the rule of the country, the regulation of the country, no matter who he is, he must be booked and taken to task.
But are you therefore confident that the raids, which no doubt have to continue, but that they will be conducted in a manner in which the objectivity and the innocence of someone until proved guilty is protected?
We hope so. That's what we have asked and requested the government to look into.
And what did they say?
They certainly take the point. If there has been...
But did they promise action?
Well, they don't promise action in respect of conducting the raid in the manner that we would like them to conduct a raid, and we have no reason to say and suggest any other way of conducting a raid, except to say, please don't make it a public hanging without giving the man an opportunity for defending himself.
So once again, your fingers are tightly crossed.
I guess so. We have to wait till the 28th of February. That's not very far from now.
You have to wait till the 28th of February, but the problem is your fingers are crossed on so many things. MAT, restructuring of tax, FERA, raids. I mean, have you got enough fingers to cross?
Well, we have 10 fingers.
And you've got them all crossed.
But in terms of FERA, I don't think they need to wait that long because of the fact that FERA, except if they want to amend the FERA, for which they have to go back to Lok Sabha.
But if they want to scrap it, they can do it.
If they want to scrap it, they can do it.
All right, we have to wait and see how they act on these issues. We have to take a commercial break at this point, Mr. Dutta, but I want to continue this discussion. In part two, I want to talk to you about what I call the big picture. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Don't go away. Welcome back to part two of our interview with Shekhar Dutta. Mr. Dutta, in part one, we were talking about some specific things the government needs to do to help Indian industry. Let's now look at the big, broad picture. Investment, as you know, is an act of faith, and an act of faith is always predicated upon confidence in the future. Are industrialists confident about the future of this government?
We certainly believe that this government is not going to fall in a hurry. We believe that this government is going to continue with the reform that they have pronounced that they would. We also believe that the opposition party in the parliament, the Lok Sabha, will also not pull this government down. And therefore, I can only say, Karan, that I don't see this government falling apart in the immediate future.
All right, the government may not fall apart, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to act as one. Are you worried by the fact that the 13-party United Front government often speaks with 23 different voices?
It does worry us occasionally when we believe that some parties are taking their public pronouncements a bit too far. Now, having said that, we must be also pragmatic. No party wants to lose its own identity, even though they may be part of the United Front government. So while they may be talking in one voice when they talk amongst themselves, either in the steering committee of the United Front or in the cabinet committee, but when they go outside, they have to per se talk in different voices because they must project to the public at large that they belong to A, B or C party.
That's very understanding of you, but is it actually the truth? After all, look at the CPI. It's vocal and openly against this government's policy of public sector disinvestment. It's against the opening up of the insurance sector. Does that worry you?
They're opposed to it, but I am fairly confident that they will see the merit in it and it will happen.
Well, at the moment, both the CPI and the CPM have pledged themselves to nationwide demonstrations in February and March.
Well, we've had demonstrations on insurance already. But I'm strongly of the opinion that the insurance will be opened up to the private sector, including the foreign investment.
What gives you this confidence?
For the simple reason that Insurance Regulatory Authority has already been announced, and that is only with a view to ensuring that there is an independent body who looks after the administrative part of insurance sector.
Yes, but at the same time, Mr. Chidambaram has said that the opening up of the insurance sector is still a long way away.
Well, like something else that he must have said about the convertibility of the rupee or any other economic reform. So it depends what is that long way away definition is.
Keynes said in the long term we're dead.
Well, if you're talking about the 28th of February, it may be a different issue. If you're talking about the 31st of March, it may be another issue. So I really don't know. I think we must appreciate, and we do that in industry, that India is a democratic country, and we must allow the democratic forces to find their views expressed in public and ultimately a consensus arrived at by all saying, well, this is best for the nation.
One other little point before we give up the subject. Mr. A.B. Bardhan, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of India, is actually on record as saying he wants the CMP, which earlier on in this interview you had praised and you said had given you assurance, he wants that CMP changed. He wants it changed to do away with disinvestment, to do away with the opening up of the insurance sector.
Well, yes, we have said so, as it so happens, to the Prime Minister. I have said so to the Prime Minister on the 31st of December. And I have said that if the United Front government coalition parties find it difficult to follow through with the CMP document, then let them change the document to the extent they would like to, but at least let us see them follow through with whatever they finally agree upon. What we would like to see in the industry is whatever is stated as the government's, whichever government is in power, as the policy of the government, we want to see action.
So what you're saying is, sort out the problem amongst yourselves, but when you present a public front, please do it unitedly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're also saying, we can understand that you have to say different things to different constituencies because you've got your identity to maintain, but please don't do it too often. Is that right?
You're right, you're right.
So you're saying, in other words, also, look, we are being understanding, but at times these guys are straining our understanding.
True. I would also add one more thing, Karan, here, that we've just recently had a very successful partnership summit in Calcutta, the CIA Partnership Summit. And you know, West Bengal is CPM dominated, and they also have, in a way, a united front government, that they have other constituents in that government, like Forward Bloc and others. They did present a very unified picture of what the West Bengal government wants for them, which is no different what the country wants.
You wish the United Front would learn a lesson from the CPM in Bengal?
Well, yes, I think there are certain lessons there, that this is also UF government in West Bengal, which is also in different fora, may talk different languages, but when it comes to putting across a united picture, they're very much there.
In your opinion, did the CPM make a serious historical political blunder in not accepting the prime ministership?
Well, it's for the CPM Politburo to come to conclusion.
Well, what about in your view? In your view, as a person, not even as CIA president, in your view, would you rather have seen Jyoti Basu in Racecourse Road?
I think I'm quite, as far as I am concerned personally, and not as a CIA president, whoever is the leader accepted by the consensus of the coalition parties, if it were Jyoti Basu, so be it. If it is Mr. Devi Gowda, so be it. We consider him the Prime Minister and the leader of the nation.
All right, before we completely run out of time, and sadly, Mr. Dutta, we are running out of time, let me just ask one final question. The Prime Minister has promised on New Year's Eve, and at least on 3-4 occasions since then in the month of January, that he's going to deliver significant, serious measures. Those are his words, not mine. How long can you wait for those?
Before he goes for the Davos meeting, which is on the 31st of January, that he would probably be leaving the country.
So you'll be disappointed if they don't happen this month, January?
I would be disappointed.
In other words, you're not prepared to wait till the budget, which is only a month beyond that.
But certain issues cannot be decided before the 31st of January, because the simple reason they affect the budget of the country. So per force they have to be announced only during the budget time. But certain issues can be announced well before that.
So at the moment, you're looking at your watch, you're looking at the calendar, and you're telling yourself the Prime Minister's got just a limited number of days to deliver.
Well, he's got plenty of time because his government is going to last for a while.
But there are some things he has to deliver on
right now. Yes.
And if he doesn't, you will be disappointed.
I certainly will be disappointed.
Mr. Dutta, for talking so openly to In Focus, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Carol.
That's it from the Office of the President of the Confederation of Indian Industry. Next week we'll be back with a new interviewee, but for today, bye-bye.